Hi again. I'm Porter Anderson. I'm from Publishing Perspectives. I'm the editor-in-chief, and we are pleased to have helped to curate this whole series right through the fair with our trade visitors this week from Frankfurt Studio. You're looking at a 500 square meter media production center that did not exist here a few days ago and has not existed before in Frankfurt's 73 years. This is brand new, and it's been created so that we can actually originate content here and beam it out to all of our friends and our colleagues who are unable to be with us in person as we go through our conversations and our debates on many, many subjects this week, and hopefully involve all of you. Some of you watching are, in fact, in the Agora right here, watching on a very big screen outdoors. It's a little nippy today, but it's very comfortable. And some of you are watching on your screens at home in many continents, and we welcome all of you. We hope that you'll stay with us all week. We're here through Friday, and then on the weekend, you can see a festival event coming right out of the same space here as the public comes in from Frankfurt and enjoys what's here at Frankfurter Buchmesse. So welcome to Frankfurt Studio, and welcome to an interesting conversation that almost has a scary title. I'll read it to get it right for you because the title's very good, written by Tom. It is Between Gold Rush and Apocalypse, the future of book markets after or with COVID. Now, if you're not scared, you're not listening. But this is actually the kind of thing that everybody, not just in independent publishing, but everybody throughout the markets, throughout the industry, are having to think about. What do we think we see coming? And of course, we didn't see the pandemic coming, did we? And so we don't know many factors. We are, I hope, getting better at predicting the lack of predictions, at understanding what we don't know. As Donald Rumsfeld would have said, you know, the unknown unknowns, because those are the ones that tend to get us. So we have two great people here to talk with us. From Paris, we have Jean Materne of Grasset, and from Milano, we have Sandro Ferri, who has come in from Edition EO, and it is great to have you both with us, because these two guys do a great deal of thinking about these things, and I need to know what they're thinking, and I think all of us do. Sandro, I'd love to start with you, because you were talking to me as we were exchanging our notes beforehand about how there are basically two worlds in publishing. And that can be overlooked so easily because you say books and you think you're talking about the same thing. Yeah. Tell us what you mean by that division.
Yeah, I think that actually there are two worlds who coexist in the publishing. Yeah. Sometimes, as here in the Frankfurt Book Fair, they meet. Like as last week in Torino Book Fair in Italy, yeah, where we had a wonderful fair. This is a public fair in Torino.
Exactly.
And there were 150,000 people, visitors. That was great. Wonderful. Really, after the pandemic, if we can say so, after the two lockdowns, it was for publishers, booksellers, people, readers were full of real joy, really, to be there, not to to hug, even to hug and to touch the books and so on.
Yeah.
And so I think that these two worlds, the independent and the corporate world, they meet only rarely. Too rarely, in my opinion. That's a pity. And the opportunities are like in this fair. At least you meet because you have to trade some rights, authors' rights, and you make a little talk. But most of the time, the resources are so different.
Yeah. Yeah.
The goals too are very different.
Yeah.
And so that it's rare that we really meet now these two worlds, and this is a problem because I think that these two worlds, they cannot live one without the other.
Right.
I mean, the corporations need the creativity, the people, the ideas, the people. The pluralism of the independent. But the independent, they need the access to markets. They need they need, for instance, bookshops, you would say maybe that even I think that even the corporation need physical bookstores,
Oh, yeah.
of course. But I think that in the last years, with especially with the Amazon and so on, there was a disruption in the markets,
Yeah.
and. For instance, yesterday I read. I'm sorry I couldn't hear all the Tom Dole speech, but I think he, in a way, he said that Penguin Random House lost a share of his market because of independent who were growing, and I think he didn't say that, but I think it was implicit, because the independent, they go more on online and on Amazon, no?
Yeah.
But it's not always so. So there are a lot of things who have to be discussed and corrected, and we have to find ways to cooperate more than now.
Exactly, because those things can be corrected better if they're done by both sides together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that tension between the two, it's always interesting. As a journalist, it's an interesting tension to watch, you know. And I look especially to the UK's market sometimes, because what's fascinating there is that there are some very powerful independent houses, more powerful than generally we see, for example, in the States. We don't have a large, powerful Faber and Faber, for example. We don't have a Bloomsbury of the same. We do have a Bloomsbury USA, but it's a British company. We don't have a homegrown powerhouse like that. That's not a corporate house. And so we have an interesting problem there in that we don't have the strength coming from independence.
Sorry if I interrupt you, but because did you read I think a couple of weeks ago I read a very interesting article. I don't remember where,
Yeah.
but on this issue you were saying why in the U.S. the independent publisher, they cannot grow.
Amazing.
I mean, they cannot grow.
Right.
And there were a lot of explanations, a lot of causes, but it's
Right.
what you're saying. And in Italy, it's more like in the UK. For instance, in last year, in the 10 more bestsellers of the year,
Right.
of all genres, 4 were by independent publishers.
There you go.
Which
And I say
big.
bravo. You know, that's what should be happening, you know. And well, you are a very powerful house yourself, Sandro. I mean,
Yes.
you produce enormous
Powerful,
work.
yeah. I'm a dwarf. I am a dwarf in
A powerful dwarf.
of financial of power.
He's
But
also modest, you see.
but at the same time we can have we can have bestsellers,
Yeah.
big
yeah.
bestsellers.
Yes, you can. Exactly. And that's overlooked so often, you know. I think your points are very cogent. Jean, talk to us. What do you see when when you look at this frightening title and you're asked, you know, what are the markets going to be? Where are we headed?
It's very difficult to say. First of all, I would like to stress that in France we do have a sort of balance between independent and conglomerate publishing. I
Yeah,
think
you have
that's
very
quite-
strong houses too. on
We
the
have strong
independent
houses,
side.
and it's quite healthy actually to have a balance between, you know, these two sorts of different worlds, as you said, and they do come together quite
And
well in
you
France.
have worked in several of the independents there, yes?
Yeah, I've been with
Gallimard,
Actes
yeah?
Sud and Gallimard,
Yeah.
and now I'm with Grasset, which is part of the Hachette group, of course.
Right.
But which is very much run like an independent company, actually.
Exactly.
That is also the strategy of Hachette. Actually, in French they call it les baronnies. Actually, it's being ruled as independent houses. Each imprint is totally independent. We're not in one building together. We have old-fashioned publishing houses in a way.
That's very nice. You have autonomy.
Exactly,
Yeah.
total autonomy, actually. And even inside Grasset, I try to run my little list of foreign fiction with autonomy and as if it was an independent publishing house
Good for you.
early in my list. This is what I try to do. I would like to say that with this quite well-balanced market, we were lucky enough. We got out of the pandemic quite well, the French market, I would
Yes, you
say.
did. Yeah.
With actually some sort of very surprising growth. Actually, the market grew last June, and that was the moment of the gold rush, which is maybe what the title alludes to.
That Tom gave us, yes.
June 2020, 1 month after the lockdown, we had this incredible movement towards independent bookshops,
Right.
and the rise was of 37% of turnover. 37%.
That's incredible. Have you ever had a 30%
No, never
rise?
in my life. No. And if you talk about the last 12 months, from June 2020, when this happened with this 37% rise all of a sudden, and June 2021, the rise is still of 19% over the last 12 months, which is huge.
Isn't that encouraging?
It is very encouraging.
It's moving on.
And
Yeah.
when you talk to individual booksellers, and we have a wonderful network. This is probably what is special about the French market. I mean, if you compare to Italy, for example, because the countries are very similar in some ways and very different in others. I mean, in South Italy, you hardly have any bookshops left anymore, which is terrible.
Yeah.
France has probably the biggest network of small and medium-sized independent
It's
bookshops.
almost 4,000 houses.
Exactly.
Shops, I mean.
Shops.
Yeah.
And all over the place. I mean, in
amazing.
little villages sometimes you have independent bookshops.
Yeah.
And in medium-sized towns, I mean, all over. And the biggest bookshop in France is Mola in Bordeaux. It's not a Paris-based bookshop. It's Mola in Bordeaux, which is a wonderful bookshop. and some of these bookshops and booksellers told me that they really had a lot of young people coming in, people who had never set foot in bookshops, and after the pandemic realized that it was time, maybe out of solidarity actually. You know, it was this big discussion if bookselling was essential.
Right.
Essential commerce,
Right.
and it was declared essential.
But
So
that's thanks to the citizens rising up and telling the government we want it essential.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I must be
That's very
absolutely
proud.
clear about that, because during the first lockdown, many of the booksellers were really afraid of COVID, and they didn't want to open the shops. So they didn't actually want the label of being essential shops. Some of them, not all of
Very
them.
interesting.
They were afraid.
Yeah.
But very rapidly, they realized that they needed, if there was a second and a third lockdown, which actually happened,
Right.
that they needed, the possibility to open the shops.
And they could use click and collect and things.
Yes,
yeah?
after a while, not at the beginning,
Right.
and click and collect has also changed the customer habits. Actually, people do
Right.
it now, even there's no necessity anymore to do it. But they
It's
got
convenient.
it's convenient. They got used to it,
Yeah.
and I think that is also an explanation of the rise of the figures of the turnover of the booksellers. So there are reasons to be really optimistic about.
I hate to say
about
this,
the
but it's like
market.
the gifts of the pandemic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something you learn, while you're going through such a
Exactly.
such an ordeal. Actually,
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think I have to make. He has Jean has made the gold rush side. I will make the apocalyptic.
Give us the
Is it-
apocalypse
is it
now,
all right?
Sandro. Do this.
Now, of course, I approve, and what John said. This is very important. At the same time, I think we have to see some details were important. For instance, in Italy, but I don't think not only in Italy, this growth, enormous growth, incredible growth, were almost only online,
And in France.
e-commerce. Not in France.
Ah.
In the last 2 years, physical stores, they lost 5% in the last 2 years before the pandemic.
Right.
While the general growth was the same as in France, 30%. So I think it's good. Wherever you sell books, it's fine. But we have to think, since the panel theme is about what will be the future.
Right.
Are we bound to go to a future where the e-commerce will be so overwhelming? Would we not have physical bookstores? I know that France is a model for defending physical bookstores.
It is,
But it's
yeah.
an exception too. I think in the UK you don't have such a good situation from this point of
No,
view.
the UK has had a very hard struggle, and in the States, we've seen a very difficult time for the bookstores. Most of them have survived, but only with a great deal of support. Subsidies that were private collections were helping to keep them going. The addition of what's called bookshop.org, which is a wonderful new service that lets you buy online and direct your sale to a local bookshop, has been helpful. But it took everything to keep them all going. And even so, a few were lost, as a matter of fact. So it hasn't been the happy experience that was
We have, yeah.
that was seen in France, which I agree is such an exception. But why can't we say today, as we talk about the future is France? We'll all have 4,000 bookshops in every country, and we'll be out there supporting them all
It's
day.
always France, the future. The revolutions
I
are
know.
always
How do they
there.
keep doing this? It's amazing, isn't it?
And we will have a new law about, Amazon, because
Yeah.
they are kind of what we call cheating with the fixed price system,
Right.
because they don't pay for
Yeah.
for the transport.
Yeah.
So that will be changed. So Amazon will be disadvantaged compared to physical booksellers in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, the government does everything they can actually to protect the physical bookshops,
Yeah.
and I think. It also has to do with a movement which we call buy local, which was
Right.
also very
Right.
strong even for vegetables. During the lockdown, people started buying vegetables again, at the farm shop around the corner and not
Sure.
in big supermarkets. And that is also something that can be transposed into bookshops.
Yeah.
And it's very strong now in France.
Yes.
Your mention of Amazon is interesting because there's the journalist in me, of course, always sees both sides of this problem. And one of the things that has become clearest to me as I cover all of the countries that I look at, in the Middle East in particular, there was a very distinct divide when the pandemic hit between those booksellers and those publishers who already had an audience and a consumer base ready to work online. Customers who knew how to get online, how to find their source for their books and get it that way, and the ones who did not. And some 27% of the bookshops, this is from the Arab Publishers Association, were lost
Yes.
because they simply had no online
Yeah,
presence.
yeah.
They had developed themselves strictly as walk-in bookstores, and they weren't able to manage. In the United States, there's plenty of complaint about Amazon, absolutely. And yet, we were so fluent in how we use Amazon. We knew so well, if I can't go to a store, I get it on Amazon. Click, click. And off they went. That kept a great momentum moving, and in fact helped us to see a very powerful rise in revenue as well.
I just want to stress that in France, the important bookshops of a certain size, they of course have a presence on the internet. They have
Right.
websites in their own right.
Right.
And I was talking about Mollard, this huge bookshop in Bordeaux.
Yep.
They have a studio almost as sophisticated as this one. And when you get invited to Mollard as a writer, they tape a video of you and it stays on the Mollard website for months. And people go to the Mollard website to check out the videos of French and foreign writers because they are so good. And they don't
Smart.
even live anywhere near Bordeaux.
Right, right.
But Mollard, as an independent bookseller, has become a reference in terms of quality of how to present writers, how to have a dialogue with them. And it's very interesting what you can do as an independent bookseller if you're clever enough to combine your physical bookshop and the variety of references you have with a quality work and a presence on the internet, on social media. And I think a lot of booksellers had to learn that
Right.
in a hard way during the pandemic.
Right.
And a lot of booksellers started upgrading a little bit their website, and a lot now understand that it helped them to attract new customers to their physical bookshops.
That's right.
I don't think we should oppose all the time social media and internet and physical bookshops.
No.
I mean, once again, it's like the two worlds. They have to work together and come together. And this is why also, like we as publishers, we try to improve our presence on social media. We hire social media managers because we old-fashioned publishers, as we are, we're not good at that, aren't we, Sandro? So we hire young people to do the social media.
Right.
And it's important actually to attract people to our list, to our catalogs, to our writers. And the booksellers have to do it in a similar way.
Yes,
It is.
If I can add something about that,
Yeah.
and about the future. We
Right.
are talking about the future. no?
Exactly.
I want to imagine. We want to imagine what will be the future landscape of booksellers in 10 years or 20 years, no? And I think that this issue of the coexistence between the two worlds, even the towards e-commerce and the physical, is very important because I think, of course, e-commerce in 20 years, we can imagine easily that it will triumph.
Right.
But I want to imagine that our especially our peripheric sections of the towns, no? Small villages, small towns, they will have stores, physical stores, where people want to go, want to make a discover, want to discuss, want to meet a friend. As you used to go to a cafe, no? But
Right.
with books also.
Right.
I think I think we should imagine a future like this, with a full also of physical stores around around our countries. I mean, we need it if we want to. It's not only about reading. It's I think for especially for a certain kind of books like the books we publish. No? We need this kind of approach to books. No, the people has to discover. Yes, they have to browse physically.
Right.
But it's also social.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
it's the fact to be in contact, and I think publishing what's Frankfurt Fair? It's about contact. It's about social contact. It's about
It's
meeting people,
the community
and
of the
discussing.
industry.
You said earlier, I mean, on the first panel, I mean, you were discussing the topic of, that we need these personal and physical meetings here to get
Exactly.
inspiration. And it's the same for readers in bookshops. I mean, they have to talk to booksellers.
Right.
And this buy local thing also means that they get sometimes closer to their booksellers, and they take them for advisors, and they rely on them, and they tell them about their sorrows and their private lives. And
Right.
whatever, it has a social role also in a community.
Right.
I think a bookshop, and also on the long run, especially in Europe, where we have this tradition of city centers. I mean, our whole European civilization is built on the Italian model of Florence and of cities.
Yeah.
You have it less in the States than in
Right.
Northern America, of course.
Right.
But I mean, we grew up like this. Having animated city centers, and if we give up on brick and mortar, on physical shops,
Right.
we will have empty city centers, and this is a problem of civilization. I
Yeah.
think it's not only a problem for us as book publishers, and because it has to do with e-commerce at large, not only for books. So I think there are, of course, movements in two directions, but I think the will to keep some form of traditional civilization with city centers, with shops, with cafes, is very strong right now, again, in Europe. And I think the pandemic has maybe strengthened that feeling
I
that
think so too.
it gives you something positive.
Right. I think you're absolutely right. And I think the thing we're saying about the future is something we've known but didn't see as intensely
Yep.
as we did when we didn't have it, and that is community. When you're stuck in your isolated spot for a long period of time and it's not safe to mix with the others, you lose sense of that community, and you lose some touch. Even if you can get online and wave at them on a Zoom thing and everything, it's different. And I think, if anything, for all of us to remember that the industry is one of community, and it offers its readers community, which they find in the bookstores. Right? This is what the States is trying to learn to do. We see our bookstores trying to learn to become events centers, where they can draw that community back over and over and say, here is your safe space with people who like to read just like you do, right? I think that's where we need to look for the future, is helping folks to feel comfortable with us, with books, with publishers.
And be part of your life again, actually.
Part of your life again. Yeah. Yeah, I think we just solved the entire problem. So this is great. You see how nice. No, it is interesting though how easily you lose touch with that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think as big as a social media is a thing. It's called social because it is social media community.
But maybe the pandemic made us aware much more that how much we need it.
I think it
that
did.
was one of the side effects of the pandemic, actually,
I think it absolutely did. And one of the things that we were saying in our last panel that's so troublesome about Zoom meetings instead of in-person meetings is that you're trying to have a meeting while you're in the rest of your life.
Exactly.
And it doesn't work the same way. You need to be able to leave your daily life at home.
And your washing machine.
And your and come to your community, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think this is a very promising concept, The more we can put it together, the better. So,
And
yeah.
also, Porter, what do you think about the disruptions or what do you think also, Jean, about the disruptions who are happening in the supply chain?
Ah, well, we have 22 seconds to handle. So, so we can't take as long as they're taking, right? We have some hope in the United States because of the White House move that actually turned the LA docks into 24-hour operations. They're starting to move a little faster, which should help the whole world a little bit. But it's a huge problem, and it's going to be a problem for the holiday season.
For the whole industry, it's going to be.
It will get fixed. It's a fixable thing, but it's a big thing. You're absolutely right, and it's caught everybody by surprise.
Yeah, that's true.
I finally have learned what the problem is that during the pandemic, people bought goods instead of services.
Yeah.
And that meant everybody wanted more, and everything got jammed up and stuck.
Yeah.
That's the simplistic way to put it. But yes, it's a big problem, and it's a good one to watch. So I'm sorry you don't have more time to talk about this, but we do need to stop because there's another good hour of programming coming to you here from Frankfurt Studio. I'm Porter Anderson for Publishing Perspectives. We've been here with Sandro Ferri and Jean Matern, and with a host of great people before us on a special focus on independent publishing. We appreciate you being with us, and we appreciate all of our fine guests who are here this afternoon. Thank you, and stay with us here from Frankfurter Buchmesse. Bye-bye.